Aside from the war in Iraq, the Vietnam War was one of the most poorly conceived, ineffective, and political wars in American history. The facts of that war are well documented. The poems I'm going to read today are about another war in Vietnam, the war inside. I wrote them to be part of the historical record about the life of one GI in Vietnam who was a draftee and who was pulled into the war against his will. I've written poetry most of my life, but after I came back from Vietnam, I wasn't able to write poetry for about 15 years. I just had no words for it. Then, in October of 1983, the Islamic Jihad bombed the Marine barracks in Beirut, Lebanon. The next day I read a banner headline that read, 200 Marines killed in Beirut. At that point, all of the rage and anger I'd been holding inside, the sense of loss I felt, the betrayal by my government, the lies that had been told, what I saw there, exploded to the surface. A few months later, I read an article in the New York Times that quoted the chaplain for the Marine Battalion, who was concerned about the fact that the Marines themselves were very reluctant to talk about the bombing. Then it becomes a ghost, he said. Sometimes you have to look the ghost in the eye. The eye of the ghost. The ghost shivers in one corner of the room like an emigre from the moon. You look over your shoulder, afraid it might speak. If it speaks, you will remember. To remember is to be a little crazy again. The ghost remembers everything. It has no stake in lying. It remembers you were too afraid to say no. You stood in the line with the others and cursed your luck. The line led to the bus to the plane to the truck to the base camp. Rain dinged the tin roofs of hooches. You really didn't know where you were or why. The ghost wanted you dead. It was afraid too, digging tunnels, one cupful at a time. In the distance, the floodlights of Tay Ninh formed an enormous eye. Bacon shriveled in the field stoves. Ambush patrols crouched like lizards for the kill. You spent the dry season eluding each other and smoked when you could. The ghost followed you home. It was with you when you wrecked the car and the neighbor's wife ran screaming to the yard, and Uncle told you, let it go, forget it, it's 9,000 miles. Fish in the aquarium swam oblivious to the crash of mortars against the thin walls of daydreams. You befriended the tree frogs and crickets again, watched a thunderstorm blow by like twisted memory, prayed it would carry the ghost away. But a man meets his ghost in the hallway mirror, brushes his teeth and locks the door. He sleeps with a flashlight and a baseball bat. The ghost squats in one corner of the room, waiting for the dreamer to rise and stand its post. In its eye as it watches from its world on the other side of the sky, you are the ghost. In 2000, I went back to Tay Ninh with a nonprofit group, and I actually saw the ghost that I wrote about, slumped under a tree. An old Viet Cong, his long, thin white beard curled around down on his chest, slumped over as though he was asleep. But it was clear, with his opium pipe at his side, that he was drugged out, probably on opium or weed. It hadn't occurred to me until then that maybe the Viet Cong, like a lot of American soldiers, also suffered PTSD. His family was taking care of him. He was not productive anymore. And I noticed that in Vietnam, too, they call it the American War. So that gave me some additional perspective about the ghost. I think this occurs in all wars. All soldiers of the same genus and species of Homo sapiens. And when the war is over, we become each other's ghosts. My first assignment in Vietnam was at Tay Ninh. I went to the Tay Ninh base camp in a 5-ton truck with 3 or 4 other GIs on Highway 22, which leads from Cu Chi to the Cambodian border. What's unusual about that area is that it's very flat. It's sort of like Kansas, western Kansas. What else is unusual is that on the other side of the base camp is a mountain about 3,200 feet, sitting all by itself on this flat plain. During certain times of the day, it takes on a black, kind of a dull black color, and for that reason it's called the Black Virgin Mountain. The mountain's called Nui Ba Dien. What's important about it is that right across the border from there, not very far, is the very end of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So the Tay Ninh base camp is positioned right between the end of the Ho Chi Minh Trail and Saigon, and that's why that area was so critical. Nui Ba Dien was an important base itself for the American troops because there was a small radar facility at the top of it. And you never did want to go to Nui Ba Dien because it was often overrun by the Viet Cong. They would sit out there at nighttime and broadcast propaganda, scary noises, that type of thing. Nui Ba Dien plays a prominent role in the poem that I'm going to read next. It's called The Ice House. Part 1, Base Camp. From where I sat in a 5-ton truck, it seemed he'd always been there. 19, no shirt, prayer beads bangling with ID tags, grenade rings around his bush hat. They stood by the road chanting, new guys, greenhorn GIs. Hey man, he said, grabbing my gear, move in with me. Mostly we filled sandbags or unloaded trucks, or after dark on bunker guard, sandflies biting our faces told half-true stories of summer nights in Missouri. We dreamed of a cool place, and once on detail sat for 5 minutes in the ice house, a Quonset hut between the ammo dump and motor pool. Blocks of murky ice stood stacked in silver bars. They kept the bodies there. It was the only cool place. Then there was an airlift to Nui Ba Dien. You should have seen him waiting for the Chinook, joking around, a stereo from Hong Kong in one hand, a carbine in the other. They ought to make a statue of him. Part 2, Mountain. The noises at night on Nui Ba Dien are ghosts of old Buddhists, they said. Cambodian tiger, 1,000 years old, hides in those caves, they said. In mists among large stones, he spliced a strobe light into a generator, watched it flicker in the bunker. Hey man, he said, let's make it like home, make it like Kansas City. We built partitions with ammo boxes, bamboo screens, hung posters of Colorado ski slopes, rock and roll stars, swung in our hammocks to the breezes of a GE fan. We had it made up there. Had it made until the rocket shredded his clothes, blew his billfold into a bush, photographs, laundry receipts, prescription for eyeglasses, shot record, best part of a letter, $5 bill. Part 3, dream. We stacked him up, naked and hard, in a dark ice house. His pubic hair a blonde willow tree, his body a silver kind of ice. Over the years, I've talked to a lot of veterans from World War II and Korea, and of course, veterans who were in Vietnam, and now veterans who are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the reoccurring themes, especially of those GIs who've been in actual combat, is a sense of their loss of innocence. I remember when it happened to me, when I realized that, there was a time when I got tired of being afraid. I was tired of it. I just said, okay, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. You guys come at me, and let's just have at it, okay? Let's do it. This happened one night after an attack on Cu Chi Base Camp. The poem is called Moonlight in a Breeze. All that's left is thunder now and low-flying jets. It's turning cool and the land crabs are out. He can smoke if he wants and soften his grip on the stock, but his peace will never come. The boy who swung on a Missouri porch to summer wind and an ice cream bell lost it all. The minute he spotted a figure in his sights, pulled the trigger, and meant it. I thought that the television series MASH caught an aspect of war that we may not think about very often, and that is the surrealism of the war, the things that happen that really shouldn't happen, like the GI in Vietnam walking around with his big stereo from one combat area to another, or going to Sydney, Australia and coming back with pictures of the girls he was with sitting in a bunker, showing them to everybody. I had a night in Vietnam when I was watching a movie. Now, I'd seen the movie before, just in fact about a year and a half before, The Graduate, which is a fairly familiar movie. And then I had never expected to see it again. I really enjoyed it, but my unit was called up for riot duty, and then we went to Fort Carson and in Vietnam. So after I was transferred back to Cu Chi, every now and then they would show a movie, especially if you were in on stand down, which is a kind of a 2 or 3 day timeout for the troops to come in and get washed off and have a beer or two and have a steak. So this poem is about a night of surrealism, I thought, in Vietnam, sort of like something that might have happened on MASH or that happened almost every day in Vietnam, I thought. It's called Saturday Night and Popcorn. I haven't been here long enough. That's what's wrong with me. I still look down when USO girls bring popcorn on their way to the officers' club. I'm puzzled by the movie lasered from the bunker over 24 young men on blankets, cushions, lawn chairs, making their beer ration last. When the siren goes off, I scrounge with the others to the nearest bunker, huddled with no weapon. The soundtrack growls down, the projector clicks to black. It's a war again, and even then, someone coughs. I wait for sappers to toss canvas bags into our middle. Dead, age 22, of plastic explosive. Two MPs with megaphones tell us the alert is over. A chopper flipped on a power line. Pilot and gunner deep fried. When I've been here long enough, I'll stay with the others to finish the movie and popcorn. I won't go back to the hooch, cry all night, and listen to a distant carbine fill my dreams with lead. Another phenomenon that's common among soldiers coming back from a war is a feeling of alienation, being different, not belonging anymore, not having the same friends or not having the same feelings with the same friends. It feels like the song from Leon Russell's song, Stranger in a Strange Land, out of place, not being able to relate to the people that you went to high school with. They don't know you anymore and you don't know them. This poem is about that feeling of no longer belonging to the country that you left. It's called Fragment of a Letter. Tommy, all the short-timers say they'll write when they get home. They never do. They disappear into a future we'll never see with a girl we'll never know. The face of the girl keeps coming to us in dreams, fades quickly in morning confusion, makes us sick with envy, wondering who she's loving now. I won't be like the others, Tommy. I won't forget to write. I'm going to write you every time I'm back over there on days I can't think straight. Days like today in this autumn light, so red and so orange, I think the trees are crying. In this red autumn, they're burning fires, making the air hazy and distant, like a day on the rubber plantation. The smoke burns fresh, the aroma of a newly lit cigarette in a wet pine grove. When I start laughing to myself, no one sees what's so funny. They don't know it's you I'm laughing about. You who could always make me laugh. You could hardly move your mouth and you said, "Now look at my screwed up face. Now I'll never have a girlfriend." And none of us could stop laughing, not even the medics lifting you into the chopper as fast as they could. But here, everybody's laughing in a different kind of world. I don't know what to say, who to tell it to, or how to make sense. I move with the crowds, don't recognize any faces, don't know the words to their songs. I watch the news waiting for you to reappear in backpack and fatigues, waiting to hear you speak again. And I don't know where you are or how to mail a letter to a dream of a war I was in a long time ago. That's all you are, Tommy, a dream, just another beat up, dragged down, screwed up dream I had one humid year when I was too young to know better. Don't get the idea I forgot to write, because I will finish this letter one day soon and put it in the mail. Most of what happens in a combat zone is pretty routine stuff. A lot of it in Vietnam was just trying to live with the elements, try to get your teeth brushed and go to the bathroom and get something to eat, enough water. Water was always scarce there. Then something happens. And usually it's something terrible and it happens quick and fast. Then it's over. But that's the one thing that you will remember for the rest of your life. That's what gets hardwired. I call it the body on the ground. The body on the ground is always with you. And so these two poems that I'm going to read are about those big bang moments that keep reverberating throughout your life. The first one is called Once a Soldier. That instant along the Cambodian border, when the tip of his index finger curled into the comfortable curve of metal, he touched for the first time in his life the slick, sleazy specter of evil. At 18, ordained a soldier at 80, forever to act on impulse, think sharpshooter, point man, platoon leader, survival. From first salute, an unseen soldier, shaven head and sinister grin, stalks within, stalks relentlessly in malls, on busy streets, hiking trails, always ready, always there. Eyes fixed in the back of his head, trained to obliterate. He knows he can take out any man who dares him. Hardwired, ready to explode, once a soldier, always a soldier, condemned to wear the uniform, endure cold, desert dry, hunger, gore, he still serves. The war over, he alone knows why he marches, automatic, cries when children sing, snaps cold without warning. Yes, sir, is what he's drilled to shout. Yes, sir, echoes in his daydreams. Yes, sir, is the man he has become. This next poem is called Bandolier. Bandolier is like a belt that you wear usually across your chest. It's got magazines with ammo in it, places to attach grenades, sometimes a Bowie knife or some kind of knife or club or a pistol sometimes. Bandolier. I thought I turned it in once and for all at Long Bin, and yet I sling it across my chest, heavy with grenades, loaded magazines, tell my young son the war is over. I fight it. Promise my baby girl I'll take it off, but can't. Lie to my lover, I left it there, and she smiles. One day I'll toss it into a rice paddy of never been. Until then I'll bear its weight and drag it into flashback afternoons with no sense of honor. I never fought for my country, only for Tony, a black guy from Detroit who humped with me deep into Cambodia. I mentioned earlier about feeling a sense of betrayal, being lied to by my country. I call that the used and abused syndrome. I personally felt like a political prisoner. I was older than most of the young men in my platoon. Before the war, I'd worked for 4 years at the Kansas City Star. And back in 1963, I remember sitting up late at night with a reporter, one of the first ones into Vietnam, who had been on a trip with the Pentagon to look around Vietnam. And he was the first one who told me that the war was a farce, in his opinion. He thought it was being fought by the military because they had failed in Korea and they had not had a war since that they could where they could earn medals and congratulate themselves. So this poem is about being trained as an assassin, which I was at Cu Chi. I never had to assassinate anybody, but the training was very intense. It lasted about 2 weeks, and for many years, my method of going to sleep was to plot assassinations. It was my method of counting sheep. It's a short poem. It's called Assassin. They shouldn't have done that. Tear him out of graduate school as recklessly as people rip a page from a public telephone book. They set his brain on automatic. Here is how you place the barrel of a .38 behind the ear of a village chief while he sleeps. Here is how to come from behind with a garrote. Lyndon Johnson died peacefully during a nap. McNamara wrote a book. The assassin was discharged into the rest of his life. Sometimes when I'm sitting outside looking at the ocean where I live, or just casually looking out the window of the car, it will happen to me. It's kind of a creeping sadness that comes out of nowhere. And it comes from all the waste and the corruption I saw in Vietnam. The people who died needlessly, that were scarred for life, who lost their families, their loved ones who could never adjust when they came back home. Some of them still live in caves up in Colorado. And that's why I don't go anymore to Memorial Day services or parades or 4th of July celebrations. The fireworks don't mean anything to me. Singing the Star-Spangled Banner has a different flavor than it used to. So I wrote this poem about a particular Memorial Day that I went to. I think it was the last one I went to. It's called A Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day. We weep today for those whose names are carved on this wall, for those whose bodies tumble yet in distant waters, for those who've never returned from the dust of another country. We weep too for these old soldiers standing here to the boom of the guns and the haunted brass of bitter bugles. They empty their tears for themselves, for the lies they believed, for the boys they once were before they learned to kill. Thank you for listening. These poems are not about me. They are about them, the soldiers who fought and died during the war. I always like to end my poetry readings by saying these few words to them. I've told them all I know. You can rest now.